Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's all right. And welcome to another show. Mm-mm-mm. There we go. So let me check everything's all right. Everything's all right. And check out the email. Make sure everything's all right. Please do send a hello through official shortwave radio at gmail.com if you want to say hello and you're not in the chat room. Always nice to have everybody here saying hello. And I guess we're ready to start. Ready to start. And here we go. So, hey, everybody, welcome aboard. And it's nice to have all of you here as usual. This is the Wednesday/Thursday edition of the live show. That is, of course, Wednesday in North America, but it's 0 hours universal time, which is Thursday for the most big chunk of the world. And I hope that you enjoy the show today. Once again, this is a show, and we of course are live twice a week. Wednesday, 0 hours universal time. That's Thursday technically, and Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 20 hours universal time. We talk about radio, we have fun with the radio, and we share a common passion that is that old technology. It's interesting because every time I hear someone in the news talk about radio, they always say, oh, that old technology of radio. It ain't that old. I think a lot of people today are still listening to the radio. Even though it's changed, even though maybe the young generation is not as radio-ish as they could be. But, when I hear, old technology of radio, yeah. Well, it ain't that, it's still very, very good, and it's still there, and it's still going to be there in 100 years. I can tell you that. But things are changing, and of course, we got to adapt to the fact that using radio is different from 20 years ago or 50 years ago and so on. And we have a lot more choices today to listen to whatever media, whatever program, whatever thing we want to listen to. And that affects every medium, including radio. And we got to remember that. My name is Gilles, and I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. That's the northeast part of North America. And we are here to entertain with my new CKUT 90.3 FM t-shirt, because I donated to make sure that CKUT 90.3 continues. And of course, I received my t-shirt today. It was pretty fast. I was surprised that it actually was already here. So it's pretty cool. And of course, this is to also help with the International Radio Report Show on Sunday at 14:30 UTC. We also, of course, have a wonderful chat room with really beautiful people. Beautiful, and it's impossible to see everyone, but it's beautiful in what it is, in the friendship and in the camaraderie and the sharing of everybody on the hobby. And it's a great chat room for that, because people are helpful. People are here to help out. They're not here to, tell you that your radio's no good and you should go into another hobby. They're not here to tell you that, you're dumb, or your question is stupid, or this is not at all this. This is the other way around. Everybody here to help you out. And whatever radio you have, whether it costs $20, $15, $500, $1,000, we're here to help you have the best out of it. And not every radio is created equal. Of course, some are worse than others. But whatever you have is what you have. If you have only one, you got to deal with that radio that you got, and that is very important to understand. Is whatever you have, you'll have to deal with it. And a lot of people have a radio that is the only thing they got, and they can't afford necessarily getting another one. Once again, the world we live in, unfortunately, is not equal. We're not all the same in what we could do and what we can purchase. And so whatever we have to deal with when it's limited. For a long time, I mean, I started shortwave, I was 13. The first 8 or 9 years, at least, of my life, what I had was what I had. I had no money to buy anything, and it wasn't even worse. In the 80s, a decent radio was very expensive compared to the salary, to how much money people made every week, or compared to today. Today, there's one thing that's amazing, is that our hobby has never been so affordable, with great choices of receivers and performance. And I mean, if I had a $50 radio in 1986, 87, that would perform like the ones that we have today with digital readout. I mean, guys, in the 70s and 80s, a digital readout was a luxury among receivers. It meant that you actually paid a premium price just to have a display with a frequency in it. And it wasn't even half as good as what we have today, which is extremely precise receivers that are on dot, doesn't drift. I mean, a $40 radio today doesn't drift. Imagine how that is amazing. Those that started today don't understand what we're talking about. Those of us that started in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we know what drift is all about. Drift was part of our radios. What we wanted is the receiver that drifts the least in an amount of time. And it's funny because, so many people don't know today what that was about. Vodka cranberry. And so, in the 80s, I remember when I got my DX302, it drifted, but oh man, I came off of a period where I had a realistic DX100. That was the drifting machine. You would tune and you would retune every minute because it was just so bad. And when I got the DX302, it was like, wow, I can actually leave that radio on that frequency for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour and still be on the frequency or close. Actually, we always, I don't know, it's I think something that we go crazy on a little bit. When you have the receivers, of the time, the DX302, in reality, I could have left an hour and still listened to the program. But, when you have that frequency in your face, and when that frequency goes off by 1 kilohertz, of course, you want to readjust it all the time, But in reality, that radio could have been tuned for an hour. And even though it would have drifted maybe a kilohertz off, it was still, solidly tuned to whatever station you were listening to. I remember a single sideband being so nice because I just tuned, on the DX100. I didn't listen a lot to single sideband because if you tuned a single sideband signal, you had to retune constantly. It was not a question of you have to retune every 2 minutes. It was you have to retune every 10 seconds. It was crazy. The DX302, in a single sideband signal, you had to retune maybe every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I mean, that was a luxury. It was like, wow, I can sit down for 10 minutes and, I'll readjust. It was still listenable, but what single sideband sounds like when it's drifting off, it's like, listening to Donald Duck talk on the radio. And, every 10 minutes you would like just, retune. It was something. It's something we don't see today. Today you have a radio that will cost you, look at the Texan PL 330. It has the precision in its display that is so amazing. No receivers of the 80s or the 70s had that precision unless you paid top dollar. And we're talking about radios that cost more than $1,000. And you've got a radio that's $60 plus shipping that is actually precise to 10 hertz in its tuning. And you look at that and you're like, darn. Technology has come to a point where what we found to be the best features of the 80s or the 70s, which is precision and as the minimum amount of drifting, is now today in a $60, $70 radio. And you think about that and you're like, wow, this is just mind-blowing. So, it's amazing when you think about the advancements. It's like computers. I mean, there used to be a time, especially if you were a gamer, there used to be a time when, 2 years was you change computers. And we're talking of a time when computers cost $2,000 to purchase. And 2 years later, it was like, yeah, that thing is slow and clunky, and I have to spend another $2,000 on it to buy something new. And it's the same today. You can buy a laptop for $500-$600, and it's still going to be okay in 5 years. It's crazy where we have moved on in all of this, and how technology has enabled us to have hobbies that are much lower priced. I understand we're not all the same. We don't have all the same purchasing power. But when I see somebody today say, wow, an MLA30 is $45, it's a lot of money to invest to not know if it's going to work. For me personally, that is, you don't know what you're talking about. $45 to test an MLA30, it's nothing. It's nothing because you're not investing that much money. I don't think, I know it's not the same for everyone, but I don't think $45 is that big of an amount of money to try out an antenna. That might change your listening hobby, actually, at all. It's, if we talk about $1,000 antenna to change your hobby, well, okay, yeah, that's a hard one to come by. But once again, purchasing power for everyone's not the same. But you've got a possibility at such a low price today to have a decent listening post, and it's okay because with the noise levels and the fact that there are less stations that are today than there used to be, one of the things that you got to understand is the fact that it's almost that it's almost given away today compared to our salaries, what we can spend to have just an okay listening post with stations that are not as it's not like the 80s or 70s. There's not that many stations around, And there are, though, a lot of stuff to listen to still. But the fact that if we had to spend $1,000 for a radio today, maybe we would be talking of a hobby that is truly dying. When I look at it today, one of the questions I got this week from someone was, is the hobby dying? I don't see it as dying. I don't see it as dying because when I look at how my channel is somewhat popular with people listening to the radio and everything, it's not a dying hobby, but it's a challenging hobby compared to a long time ago. Much more. There's much more challenge in actually tuning the bands today, and that is something that we have to understand. One of the sad things about listening today is people tend to think they turn on the radio, and I see it. I saw it this week in a couple of posts. People saying, well, I got this fancy radio I just purchased, and I'm hearing nothing except a couple of religious stations. One of the biggest problems is it's not necessarily that much the lack of stations. If we could all, for a moment while I'm doing this show tonight, have a power outage, of course, you would not see me anymore. But for radio listening, you'd suddenly understand that, wow, my radio is alive with tons of signals. How can that be? I never hear anything. And I think that, and I still think the problem in our society of radio listening, it ain't the lack of stations. Because every meter band of international broadcasting has more stations than you think. It's a lot more of the noise around us that is blocking the weaker stations that make it to here. When I go to Perry Island, the expedition, and I hear, like super clear Vatican radio and the BBC and Radio France and the Voice of America, but it's not that they're super strong. They're not super strong. It's still very clear and easy to understand and listen. You don't have to have a full scale signal to have an easy listening experience with a station. Your radio station can actually come in a low noise environment. Your S meter could go up to S2, S3. It's in the low scale. But if it's quiet, it's easy armchair listening still because there's no noise to compete. There's no blocking of that signal. Noise is the number one problem, is why we find that there's nothing on the bands. Nothing else. Propagation, I think in the past few years with the solar minimum, too many people have used the excuse of the low solar activity to say that, oh, well, we're in the low part of solar activity. That's why we don't hear that much. And they mistake low solar activity with noise level around you is why you don't hear that much. I'm tired, and this is literally really the truth. I'm extremely tired in people saying, oh, well, you're at the bottom of the solar activity, so that's why bands are crappy. No, they're not, and they're not crappy because it's low solar activity. Solar cycle's been there all the time. They've been there every 11 years for the past 100 years of radio listening. People listen to the radio in the high peaks, low peaks. I had some of my best DX and the low parts of solar activity. And I'm tired of people saying that because it's not the truth and you don't understand half of why you don't hear anything. And of course, part of the people will go on and say, well, I don't hear anything because it's low solar activity. So I'll turn on my radio again in a couple of years. No, I'm sorry. It's obvious you don't understand anything about propagation when you say that. And it's obvious you don't understand that, even though low solar activity changes the frequencies you're listening to. Absolutely. It's not why you don't hear stuff. It's noise, and noise is the biggest problem of our hobby. I'll say it again and again. There's no lack of signals. If you are in a low noise environment, tune the 31 meter band, 49 meter band, 25 meter band. The amount of signals there, you'll be amazed that it's, crowded with stations. But half of them, or 75% of them, are washed out in that noise floor because the noise is just too darn of a problem. And how do you explain that? How do I explain? Every time I get somebody new in the hobby on the channel, finally they purchase that radio. And the first thing that they tell me is, I don't hear anything. What do you tell that person? It's easy for some of us that are more technically advanced to say, throw a wire outside the window, do this, buy a loop, plug in that, go somewhere else. Honestly, think about it for a second. Put yourself in a newbie shoes. I have no idea what I'm doing. I got a radio. I hear nothing. What's your first thought about that? What is the first thing that you think? Either my radio's broken, or that's crappy. We don't hear anything. It's not true. We're going to hear the world on this thing, and so on. And how do you explain to somebody? Well, you got a lot of noise. I mean, static is static. A radio that you turned on 30 years ago and a radio that you turn on today, what do you hear? Static. There's no difference in static to the ears to anyone that is, doesn't understand it. So that noise that when you turn on the radio today is the same noise, sounds like the same thing as 50 years ago, 40 years ago, when you're tuned to a frequency where there's nothing to listen to. But man, what do you tell that person? It's tough to explain to somebody, man, you gotta go. I think it's even a bummer. Once again, think about the fact that you are not hearing anything, and you've got to tell someone that starts the hobby, well, I'm happy that you purchased that $100 radio, but now that you'll have it, if you want to hear anything, you got to go 50 kilometers from your home in the middle of the woods somewhere, and you'll see there's tons of signals there. And then you're going to have like, what? That's not what I was thinking. There's mitigation. We can, I talk about the MLE30 for a very simple reason. It's an affordable antenna that might give you some form of radio listening in your noisy environment. But the thing is, it's not a miracle antenna. And honestly, when you tune around in a quiet place with a little piece of wire, you still get 10 times more signals than a loop outside your home, even though it's better than, just a telescopic or just a piece of wire. And that's the biggest problem, is we are in a world where noise is a huge problem. And the analogy that I see a few times here, because some of you like astronomy, I think is a great one. Think about somebody that wants to start astronomy. You buy a telescope. and you live in a big city like Montreal, like New York, like Los Angeles, go out. Anybody that's been in a big city and has been in a very, very dark place totally knows that the sky isn't the same at all. And the telescope has to deal with noise, but that noise is light. But it's the same thing. That washed out glow in the sky when you're in the city is exactly the same thing visually. If you could see the noise around you, you would see a glow around you. It's exactly the same thing. And it's funny because, somewhat in analogy, the when you live in a rural area, you see more sky. And it's funny because a lot of people living in rural areas also have more shortwave often. It goes together. The more people per square mile or kilometer, the more noise you'll have, and the more light pollution you'll have. It's something that is prevalent, and unfortunately, if you buy a telescope, yeah, you have to go 100 miles away from the city to really see a dark sky. And even there, you gotta be careful where you go. Well, yeah, you might have to go, into another spot with your radio. One of the cool things about radio and shortwave radio is that, and I've seen it here, and I have to do a series when the weather is really nice. I'm going to do a series on that. Show you that with astronomy, yeah, you got to go in 50 miles away. With a shortwave radio, it's not as bad. You can go to a local park, which could be surprising. I did a video this week of the PL368, and it wasn't even the best environment. It was still a little noisy where I was. And just at a park 15 minutes away, it was already a million times better doing a scan on shortwave and listening to stations. And that is just showing you that at least there's a lot of possibilities without having to own a car and go really that far. Just going a little further away from the homes, from the different buildings around you. If you find a park, if you have a nice little park, just go in the middle of the park and check out that radio. You'll be surprised at the difference in what you get. Unfortunately, what was the biggest problem in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was radios had, I remember the biggest problem of a receiver back in that, and when I started, was the selectivity. Trying to listen to that signal in the middle of a gazillion other signals that are all jammed, packed 5 kilohertz with each other. And only the best radios would give you the best opportunities to listen to anything like that, because you'd be able to still hear that station that is jammed, not jammed, but that is, in the middle of 2 strong signals on either side. And thing is, that was the problem at the time. Trying to get a signal because there were too many signals packed together. Noise was not that much of a problem, although probably some would have to deal with it. But noise was not that much of a problem. Yeah, I know, guys. I'm sorry if I blabber a lot tonight. I want to talk a little bit. I feel like I want to express myself. And one of the things about the 80s is the signals were there, and your radio was either good or crappy at separating the signals. And the frustration was different. The frustration was not, I don't hear anything. The frustration was, I can't get that darn I remember, I have a great example. I remember being super frustrated because I could hear Radio RSA from South Africa. But it was almost impossible to listen to the program because on either side, 5 kilohertz above and below, there were 2 strong stations, and I just couldn't make it out. And I was frustrated at that. That was our frustration of the old days. I can't get my favorite station tonight because the 2 other stations on each side are too strong, and they're just like, overloading, and they're just like, invading the bands. And today, that problem, it's not zero. I mean, an example that happened this year in the winter schedules that I found sad was Radio Marti on 6125. Radio Marti here is always very strong. And you get Radio Marti on 6125, and you got to deal with that while Radio Romania was on 6130 all winter. I can tell you, I didn't hear Radio in Romania that much in the evening here. And the maximum usable frequency was quite low, actually. So a lot of the 7 megahertz was not always, and often not even propagating here. So, it's sad because when you look at all the frequencies that were kind of empty, you're like, yeah, they could have been 20 kilohertz away or 30 kilohertz away, and we would be happy, But that's life sometimes, and it's not always, these stations. When you look at the HFCC, and that's what something that I was thinking about in the summer schedules, because remember, this coming Sunday, frequencies and times are changing. One of the things that I was thinking about is in today's schedule season, where there's a lot of space, the HFCC that coordinates all of those stations when they ask for the frequencies should not be looking just at what that frequency, if it's okay to use. They should be looking at the adjacent, maybe 10 kilohertz on each side, to see if there's a possibility that you might be interfered. I think that would be an added bonus for the HFCC, so that everybody would at least understand, okay, I'm not going to use that frequency because 5 kilohertz below or above, there's a strong station that might prevent people from listening in. So anyways, it's that's another type of problem. And, that's something that sometimes, I don't know what's the capability of, for example, of Radio Romania, of being able to change frequency in the middle of its schedule season. A lot of stations, if you tell them, well, we can't hear you, you should use that frequency. I remember it used to be something that happened a lot. You would write a reception report, tell the station, hey, I can hear you because there's 2 strong stations near the frequency you're using. It would be better if you use this or that frequency. And so the thing here is, would Radio Romania respond to that if anybody would write and say, hey, that frequency was crappy and you should be on that instead, But, man, at least they're on the air, and we try to do the best with all of that. So I managed to talk for 35 minutes. Pretty amazing, eh? I'm a blabbermouth. So we also, by the way, have a Facebook group. If when the show ends and the chat room stops, official SWL channel on the Facebook group is the place to go. And don't forget, you can say hi on the email, officialshortwaveradio@gmail.com. We have Elizabeth saying hello and saying thank you for all you do. It's my Wednesday evening fun time. It's nice to be here. And we have Nick that is located in Anchorage, Alaska. Cool. Nick says that he's been on and off the hobby for a long time and that he enjoys the live shows. First time he says hello, but he's been watching for about a year and a half. So cool. Nice to have Nick in Anchorage, Alaska. And Elizabeth in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. So Bobby Burgess, WA5107 SWL in Morgan City, Louisiana. Nice to have you here. RJ88 Dakota. Nice to have you here. Wentzville, Missouri. WA0113 SWL. Mark Cope. Nice to have you here from Dallas, Texas. Yogi. Nice to have you here. VK2005 SWL. Shelly. Nice to have you here from Southeast Pennsylvania. And says she hasn't been listening to the radio much, but I hate missing this show. Cool. James Johnson, nice to have you here. WA4493 SWL in Florida. Randall Klontz, nice to have you here in Chicago. RTM, nice to have you on board. Jerry DX, hey there. Rufus Newt from Laurentian Valley, Ontario, nice to have you here. Matt in Denver, Colorado, hope you are safe and well with the unfortunate events that happened a few days ago. It was sad to hear. I was thinking about you, actually. Rufus is VE3055 SWL. Jetcrafter, nice to have you on board. Been enjoying some few days outside with the radios, with warm weather. Yeah, here too. Felt good to go out on the balcony and enjoy a little bit of radio. So, yeah, I heard some major flooding in Australia. Sad to hear. Soul Calf, nice to have you here from San Diego. Joe in Chicago, nice to have you here. Skip and 2EI, nice to have you on board. TVDXer, bonjour, ça va bien? J'espère que tu vas bien toi aussi. Nice to have you here. Joe Tyson from North Carolina, KM4WRQ. Brian Penny and Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Nice to have you on board. XNADXer, Keegan, nice to have you here from Northwest Arkansas. Mike, WDX50, nice to have you on board from Northwest Arkansas. And we have Carl Icon, nice to have you here. Cell phones are radios. Absolutely. I mean, it's something that a lot of people don't think about. Cell phones, when you use your laptop with wireless internet, it's radio waves that does the magic. James Johnson picked up KBC radio and WTWW over the weekend. Both played great selection of music. Yeah, mighty KBC and all. Yeah. Joe, nice to have you here from Virginia. Rob, the blind picker, nice to have you here. W0RAB in Connecticut. We have Robert Cross, nice to have you on board. James Johnson, nice to have you here. No, it was a pretty quiet birthday. It was live show, listening to the radio, and just taking it easy, actually. Nothing fancy, I mean, we can't really meet up, so because we're still in confinement. We're our curfew is moved from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., but still, in a condition where things are kind of complicated a little bit. So just, enjoy a nice little day. Chess, nice to have you here, Chess Tank from Louisville, Kentucky. Nice to have you here. Mobile Armored Strike Command, nice to have you on board. What else do we have? Jerry DX says radios are beautiful. Yes, they are. Canadian Radio TV Guy, nice to have you on board. Aerial Imaging, nice to have you here. Chuck, nice to have you on board from Philadelphia. Enjoying my new Texan PL990. Cool. Great little radio. I love mine. Terry Cook, nice to have you here from Montana, KB7BQ. CharDX counted 24 active volcanoes on his Volcanoes app yesterday. Cool. Mobile Dormers Recommend says, here's an idea. If you have a street in your town or city that is radio related and its name, take a picture of it and share it. Here, Boulder Hill, there is a road named Radio Road. Oh, wow. Wow. Did I ever encounter a road or a street that would be radio related in Montreal? Maybe one called Marconi, I think. But apart from that, and, with all the streets in Montreal, I'm sure there's something there. There's something for sure. Robert Cross says radios are the best. What else do we have? Skip says, hey, you kids, get off my lawn. God. JDX wished the Malachite would be available 30 years ago. Hey, I wish I had the radios I got now when I started in 1982. And an MLA 30 or something, Actually, the long wire I had was pretty good, but still, an MLA 30 would have been interesting to. The worst part is an MLA 30 would have been possible in 1982 without any problems. I mean, it's not very, and there probably were some magnetic loop antennas back then, which were like $800. But Tom DXer, WPE2QED from the Hudson Valley, New York. Matt says, comparing the prices of just about anything from the 80s to today when you adjust inflation is pretty crazy. The first Sony Walkman tape players were close to 100, about 275 equivalent today. Yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy. And it's not just a price for a device. It's also how manufacturing and of course Chinese manufacturing in a big part also gave us much more for each dollar and performance also, David KJ4CMY, nice to have you here from Georgia. In the 1970s, I had a receiver with a digital readout. People wanted a simpler receiver and traded it for a Sony ICF 2001. Wow. The Mike WDX 50 radios are beautiful indeed. If you are on Flickr, there's a group there where people post photos, radios, really nice ones there. And a lot of radios from the good old days were so beautiful. Absolutely. Levi Nathan, nice to have you here from Israel. Joe Rodman, my Drake TR7 still drifts for the first 30 minutes or so. Yeah, it's like the DX302. The first half hour was kind of more of a drifter, but after it settled down with the heat, it was not too bad. Dr. Sisop, nice to have you on board. James Johnson, my FR200 drifts like a boat caught in the fast-moving current. Yeah, the FR200, I got one here. That's a pretty good drifter too. VT Radio, Paul AA1SU, nice to have you on board from Essex Junction, Vermont. Matt, that DX300 that I got drifts something horrible in SSB, and it's a good 2 killers off to boot, but it's solid in AM. So, yeah, the 302 probably performed similarly. The first half hour to an hour was killer, but then it was, of course, compared to today's radio, it's probably bad, but compared to a radio of 1980 or 82, it's what it was. Tristan, nice to have you on board. Tokyo Drift. The movie wasn't about cars; it was about radios. Yeah, that's where the it all came from. People drifting with their cars. No, that's a radio term. Drifting was a radio term in the 80s and 70s. Like their Sysop back on his ICOM 7300 and Cuban jamming. What else do we have? What else do we have? Keegan, my dad, W9JEF, has an ICOM AC7300. It is a very popular transceiver for my ICOM because price versus performance, I think it's one of the best deals out there. Chaz Tank says, look at the size and features of radios compared to the 1980s and back. I was so surprised at how many features are packed into such a small radio today. Absolutely. Absolutely. There was I didn't know what to do yesterday. I was doing stuff and I started looking on YouTube and found a very interesting PBS documentary about the birth of transistors and the team that led to the discovery. And it's a nice story. But as they mentioned, there is how no one probably understood how important that discovery was and how it changed the world in a major way. Harry Olden, I'm a medium wave DXer and considering getting an SDR like the SDR Plate DX. Do these radios have the sensitivity and selectivity to be good DX radios? Will computer noise get into the radio? So you can get an SDR player SPDX in its and especially it's got high it's got HDR mode in medium wave where you can high dynamic range to have it perform well. It's a decent performer in medium wave. Is it the best? That I can't really compare. I'm not that much of a medium wave DXer. Of course, there's AirSpy HF Plus, which is here in my part, it seems to overload crazy, which is not making it necessarily an interesting SDR. They are great. They are sensitive from what my personal view. The computer noise is mitigated if you use first of all, a good USB cable with ferrites or chokes at the end. Mine doesn't suffer from really computer noise, really. The other thing, of course, will be mostly the antenna that you use. You'll have to have an outdoor antenna for real good medium wave DXing. That's far away from your computer, that's for sure. Dr. Sisop trying this new Baofeng, says 18 watts and putting out less than 3 watts in terrible splash rejection on VHF. Well, they're cheap radios, so they're not necessarily always exactly what they should be. Kevin, nice to have you on board. Just got his first shot of COVID. Cool, congratulations. That is nice. Nice. Mineral imaging, a big component of the hobby for me is to achieve the top performance for the lowest cost. Have a shockingly low amount of money interested for the capability that I have attained. And that's cool because, you know what? Today, it's nice in a time when the hobby is a little more difficult to get into. I think it's nice and it's cool that there are it costs less to get into the hobby because it helps our hobby actually, knowing that you can purchase something that's not too expensive but still is a really good radio. What else do we have? Yeah, noise levels are getting higher, that's for sure. Kill King 110. Rob, nice to have you here from Phoenix, Arizona. What else do we have? Kimberly K6YYL. Hope you got a few subscribers off of my mentioning of your YouTube channel. Pretty cool, and hope it's gonna actually make you want to make more videos. I'm happy to help out. Matt says, I've experienced a couple of power outages since getting into this hobby, but unfortunately it wasn't great DXing. One day was during an electric storm, so clearly not a good time to try radio. Yeah, that's for sure. But there's a huge difference. And also, of course, power outage does not have to be at noon also, because that's not the best time of the day for listening in. Aerial imaging, you don't have to be a big spender in this hobby. A PL330 or 368 while on a walk at a park is about on par with a 1K radio and antenna at your house finding QRM. Oh yeah, for sure. If you guys noticed, I don't talk much about expensive tabletop radios here. Even though I've got an Icom ICRD 500, which is $1,700, I do have the Yaesu FT450 transceiver. This channel, I tried to keep it at a level that is more affordable, first of all, for everybody. So it's not that you don't talk about expensive radios. If I had the money to buy expensive radios, there probably would be more of them, and I would talk about them. But I find that the reception and the receive capabilities today of a lot of portables are so amazing that when I tune with, say, the Icom ICRD 500, I'm not impressed anymore. There used to be a time when an expensive tabletop was a killer radio. Today, it's better in some ways, yes, but it's not a killer radio anymore. It's not. It's bells and whistles, its buttons and its features might give you an edge on getting some of the signals and maybe DXing and understanding them a little more. But it's just an edge. A lot of people disagree with when I say that, but I have enough experience in testing out, especially with a couple of tabletops that I've owned, and including this Icom ICRD 500, to understand that today's good portables are not that far off of those $1,000 radios suddenly. There used to be a time when there was a huge difference. When I moved from a realistic DX302 to my Kenwood R5000, when I moved from one of my portables at the times to the Kenwood R5000, there was a difference. The R5000 was the killer radio, the killer performance compared to all of the lower priced. Today, we have radios that are 100, 150 bucks that are so near the performance of a $1,000 radio. It gets to a point where you're just wondering, how much money really do I need to spend in this hobby? And if you notice, I don't talk much or even promote much, $1,000 tabletops, because I don't see the need for that. And rather than actually promote a $2,000 desktop receiver, I'll probably tell you, maybe you should try an SDR first. That for a few $100 is going to be so close that you're wondering if a desktop radio is really needed today. I would say that a lot of desktop receivers, not that they don't have an edge, like I say, expensive desktops have a little something more. And of course, they don't overload at all. That is, my Kenwood, my Icom ICRD 500 here does not overload at anything. That is something that you see where, electronics is capable of dealing with a lot more. I can listen to the VHF, UHF range on it. And even with the strong FM signals here, it just is fine. No, breakthrough of anything. No problems dealing with strong signals. I always say, and I'll keep saying it. When somebody tells me, well, that radio, it's so good because it's so sensitive, that's why you have to play with the RF gain. I always answer back, if you have to lower the RF gain in a radio, it's because the front end is crappy, and it's not supposed to be. And I always thought of RF gain more of your radio isn't good enough, so you put that button there so that we can lower its sensitivity because it can't cope with strong signals. And that has always been my thought, and it's still today, and nobody's going to change that. There is no need for attenuation or RF gain if the radio's front end and electronics is capable of dealing in any situation. I saw a post this week. Somebody said, well, radios, some radios are good in certain environments and not in others. And my answer back would be, no radio should be better or bad in an environment. I'm sorry. No. A radio should be equal to what it should be anywhere. And when people tell me, well, you're in a unique area. No, I live in a big city. I'm not the only listener in a big city. I'm not going to go back to the ICR 30 because I know that a lot of people go crazy, and I get tons of crap mail of why I'm bashing the R30. It's a crappy radio. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, if it had been better designed, it could be a good radio. I should not be. And one of the reasons why I'm going to just say here, and I'm not going to take the R30, I'll take it as an example, but it's not the only radio that's like that, is imagine you don't know what you're new in the hobby. You get that radio. It's cool. It's cool looking, has tons of features, some really cool features, but you shouldn't have to understand that you have to put an attenuator on in order to receive on a band, because it's overloaded. Nobody understands that except a geeky guy that knows more about radio. So imagine somebody that purchases the R30. That's not me. He's new into the hobby. Here in Montreal, he's going to return that radio. It's like, oh, wow, I don't get anything. Because you don't have and you don't know radios. And I tell you, no radios, you should have to turn down the RF gain in any situation except if you're at, 10 feet away from a transmitter. Or if a 50 kilowatt station is really just down the street from where you live. No radio, you should have to play with the RF gain to make it better. And that, I will always stand by that. And I will always think, you add an attenuator, an RF gain to a radio that just can't handle signals. It's not a feature to have an RF gain at all. It just means, the radio is crappy when you have too strong signals, so you have to lower its sensitivity. I'm sorry, but that nobody will change my mind on that. KW1161, nice to have you here from Tucson, Arizona. Carter Bigelow, 1973 SX190 receiver. Cool. Dean Hintz. This mode of communication is so important, especially when so many factors are out there to stop us from communicating and sharing ideas. Keep up the good work, and we can talk to one another. Cool. Welcome aboard. TV DXer's got WCBS coming in strong. Cool. Hen Freelangi, nice to have you here. Hi, Browler, nice to have you here from Arkansas. What else do we have? Mobile Armored Strike Command. Noise is a big problem, just like light pollution for amateur astronomers. Absolutely. Yeah, you got to choose them wisely. Here, my LED bulbs, which are Philips branded, are not noisy at all. I don't see a difference at all when I use them. But some of them are, so you got to be careful when you choose them. Nissan Greenwich, nice to have you on board. else do we have? Oh, yeah, Jerry. If you don't have a lot of noise, a wire can go a very long way on shortwave. Absolutely. Kimberly, yes, I have an extra noisy day from our Santa Ana winds generating more static noise today. Wow. Aerial imaging. The key mistake I see people make is to have that wire connected to their radio without a coax between. The wire will absorb the household QRM. Yeah, that is, of course, something. That's why, I always explain, but it's tough to explain that. And it's tough to explain that your radio needs to have a shielded cable bringing that signal from outside. KW says, blame the noise on COVID. Well, maybe there were more noise with COVID since there were more people at home. CWB says, I agree. Low solar is also an amateur operator's biggest excuse. I run low power and make contacts every time I turn on the rig. The signals are there. Just take some patience and a little experience. Absolutely. There's way too much of an excuse of, oh, well, low solar activity, that's why everything's crappy. I'm really tired of hearing that, honestly. Mickey Delnage, nice to have you here from rainy Sherwood Park, Alberta. It's raining here today. Tomorrow it's supposed to be 70, like 21 Celsius. Then after that, it's going to be almost, they're talking about snow in this weekend. So, the ups and downs of March. Jao Sombra Nuance, nice to have you here from Brazil. Kill King, there is legislation, actually, the FCC, and there are regulations on the devices can make. The problem is now everything we get from China direct, and it bypasses all of these tests. So you get stuff that you buy from China that never had been tested and that are built so basic in its electronics that there's just no shielding anymore. Carlos Aguila, nice to have you here from Mexico. Pretty cool. Thomas Olson, nice to have you on board from Baltimore, KB3ZAA. Yeah, camping is a great place for astronomy and radio, Jerry DX. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kel King says, I'm working on a arborist throw line set up so that I can set up a wire reel antenna in places like a park easier. Cool. When I go to a park, I just, I bring like 30, 40, 50 feet of wire and I just throw it in a tree and do some DXing for a couple of hours. Then I just pull the wire to take it down. Refus Newt, there are 6 houses in my immediate vicinity. The crossroad LED light generates the only noise I can define. Wow. JDA Dakota, it's amazing even what a walk through the park or forest would do for a shortwave radio with a regular whip antenna. Tossing a wire antenna into a tall tree is even better. Absolutely. Pretty crazy. Let's try to go down to the chat room a little bit faster. What else do we have? Just gonna, okay, I just jumped like from real far. We're gonna try to catch up as much as we can here. Okay, we go here. Robert Cross listens to shortwave most of the nights, some of the mornings. Be really tired next day. I've been up most of the night listening to shortwave, and that's cool. I haven't done a all-night shortwave in such a long time. VTR Radio just worked KA6LMS/1 Last Man Standing Special Event Station on 80 CW. Operator from Vermont. Cool. What else do we have? Ray Carlisi, nice to have you here. Carl Icon, you can get AC surge projectors with EMI RFI filters. Not perfect, but they do help a lot. Yeah, the biggest problem with that is not that, it's the fact that all your electrical appliances, so your all the the wiring in your home also acts as a super big noise generating antenna. Cool TVDXer. Yeah, I got it today. I made my donation for CKUT, and of course I asked for that t-shirt. It's a nice t-shirt. I actually find it really, really nice. Fits perfectly too. Kamagzi76, nice to have you here from West Michigan. Robert Cross is in Ireland. Everybody saying hello to Elizabeth. Yeah, parts of the northern areas, Dr. Sisab, that are in that permanent. It must be interesting. I'd be so curious to like take radios out and go to places like just go to northern parts of the Arctic Circle where it's daytime, 24 hours for the summer. Check out what propagation is all about and what do you receive there. It's pretty amazing. Tor Pluto, nice to have you on board from Germany. Matt says, thanks, Joe. Yeah, we got stuff from the stores in the Jaston shopping center and hate at restaurants there. I only shopped that store a couple of times when I lived in Boulder because it was too far away. Yeah, I immediately thought about you when I saw what was happening. I was like, oh God, I just hope, that nothing. RTM has Radio Thailand booming on 13750. Yeah, Dr. Sissa, eventually they'll open the border. For now, it's closed until April 21st. Will depend on the number of cases, that's for sure. A couple of provinces in Canada are actually going back to a third wave. That includes Ontario. Here in Quebec, for now, we had our second wave, which was bigger than the first one, but things are kind of levering it, kind of the level. They're at the plateau. So let's hope it doesn't go back into a third wave before we actually get all our vaccines and stuff, because man, it's getting complicated. And I think a lot of people are getting tired here, like everywhere in the world, actually. Jet Crafter listening to some bombers passing over Maine heading oceanic on UHF. Listening to the U.S. Air Force on 4724 with multi-character EAM on a Conicom GP5. So that's very cool. Very cool. Conicom is hoping to have the next GP7 SSB, or the what is actually the Texan PL368, possibly in April. So cross your fingers, guys, that you can order from Conicom. They'll have a few modifications. The antenna is going to be sturdier, so it's going to be a little more, less. It's going to be more difficult to break down the antenna and stuff like that. So I'll keep you guys updated, anyways, on the availability of the Conicom version of the Texan PL368, if you guys want to purchase it from a U.S. outlet instead. Dmitry Lavrinovich, nice to have you on board from Minnesota. And yeah, Paul was that was a cool one with Paul the cat on the balcony. He just jumped on the table and was like, okay, well, you're part of the video now. AM FM DX radio, nice to have you on board from Washington. Chuck CP Davis, 13750, nothing in the Twin Cities. What else do we have? Tariffs being lifted on Chinese products. That's going to help us because everything comes from China is going to be less expensive. You know, we got to stop kidding ourselves. Putting tariffs on Chinese products, the only people that it's hurting is us who buy Chinese stuff because everything comes from China anyways. Jim Gordon recently bought a used Athon G3. What an awful radio. Lots of AM breakthrough on shortwave and birdies all over AM. What do you and others think of it? I've heard a lot about a G3. I can't really give an opinion. Never owned one or tried one. I did see some people that happy with a G3. So maybe you're just kind of correlating what I've read in the past, but I don't really know. I don't know if anybody else there. Maybe somebody has a G3 in the chat room and wants to comment on that. The one I have is a G5, and that one is a superb performer. Mark Music Man, what portable radio do you recommend for a beginner? You should look at the Texan receiver, the Ethon Elite 750 or the St. Gian ATS 909X2. I find the St. Gian overpriced, and the Ethon Elite 750 to be not what it should be. And if you're going to spend that amount of money on a radio, take a Texan PL 990X. That'll be a great radio, great sound, and a good performer. Spartan ordered 990X Monday, got it today, one day after it got to Anchorage from Hong Kong for only $14 to Michigan. Just a whip, got 11,820 Arabic. What a great radio. Yeah, you probably got Saudi Arabia, 11,820. That signal's pretty good here in the East Coast, in North America at least. Kelly Buggs, nice to have you here from Colorado. Been listening to Shortwave since 1988. Cool. The good old 80s. And there's a lot of stuff. RJ80 Dakota, the X160 used to drift terribly for the first 15 minutes. After about 20 minutes or so, would be fine with much less drift. Yeah, that was something with a lot of the radios back then. You know, you give it a half an hour and time that it actually heats up, things would get better. Jim, nice to have you here from Rhode Island. Chris66, nice to have you here from Kentucky. Thomas Bibish, nice to have you here from Ohio. Chris G7VEO, nice to have you on board. Did you get your new sloper up? No, I'm not. It's still on my backyard balcony. I'm not gonna put it back up for now. I did put up my discount, the Tram 1411, temporarily for a day to test it out. And even at its low altitude and bad setup, it already impressed me. So I think that it's going to be interesting. As for what could replace my my sloper, if I can get my ham license, I think the best would be to put up an antenna that would be ham radio friendly, let's call it like that, for all the HF bands. So what else do we have? Boyd, nice to have you on board. Have several Sony ICF 2010, also 15-year-old Kato KA1103, and understand the new K1103 is not as good. The one that is DSP, and definitely is apparently not as good as the original, for sure. But that's ICF 2010 is a great radio that you got there. Oh, Kimberly, thank you. Appreciate it. Got 27 more subscribers. Cool. All RTM bought a Texan S2000, great desktop radio. The dial, as far as I think it was 250. Carl Icon says today's radios are also have higher sensitivity, making them more likely to pick up all signals, including unwanted noise. Yeah, the problem with radios is that in a standard antenna environment, remember that noise is a signal, and a radio does not discriminate between the noise and the radio signal you want to hear, because it's all RFI, it's all radio frequency, and all radio frequency interference is radio frequency signals. So noise is a radio signal. The stations are a radio signal. Magnetic loop antennas are able to make some difference of the signal because of the polarity, the way that the signals are. But still, the more sensitivity you get, the more noise you'll get also, because it's a signal. It's a radio signal. KEW1161 says, just received news Belka DX radio. I'm amazed at the DX potential of this radio on just the telescopic whip, better than my old Sony 2010 and PL880. Yeah. I won't test it properly. I don't have one, so I'm, yeah. I could be wrong, but I doubt that a Sony 2010 can be as good as a Belka. But I don't have one, so it's just personal opinion here. Maybe you could do videos and show us the difference. Because Sony 2010 is on the top of the line here of radio receivers. I often said it, receivers today have achieved a level of sensitivity that is pretty much maxed out. And when somebody, I respect your opinion totally here. I'm not saying that because I don't believe you, because it could be possible. It could be possible in a way that you could test it on all. But when I see somebody give me such an opinion of how different things are between radio A and radio B, knowing that you're giving me two great radios, I immediately kind of back off a little bit, because I'm like, I'm not sure that could be the case. I get bashed all the time because I say that the AirSpy HF Plus Discovery, I don't find anything that shows that it's better than the RSPDX. And I always get, oh, no, it's so much better. You're just not using it right. I am. And I know what I'm doing. And no, it's not better. And that's my personal opinion of my personal tests. And I want somebody, because nobody actually does really show a real clear example that it's better. None of the videos I've seen, none of the tests that I've seen or heard about prove anything. Often done with two different software, No, I can't take your tests seriously, because you cannot test an SDR with two different software. It has to be the same. And the other problem is, a lot of people will say, well, no, this is better. No. Even in the same software, when I use my RSPDX and the AirSpy HF Plus, the settings in the software are different. That means the same setting and the same software with two different radios doesn't mean the same thing. So there's no clear, yes, this is much better than the other. Show me a example, and I don't want to see an AirSpy example, because I'm reading too much about how AirSpy is a bad player in the radio field, and they are just arrogant, and do not want anybody to compare any radios with their AirSpy. That for me is already something that tells me I'll never buy an AirSpy device ever again. And for some of those that have sent me personal comments saying I'm biased with SDR Play, I'm not. If the AirSpy would be clearer, better, I'd say it's clearer, better. Did I bash the AirSpy? I did not. I just said it's as good. I think that's a worthy positive point. It's as good. I don't have test equipment, but to anybody who will say, well, I do test equipments and I do this and that, I'm sorry. Test equipment of radios means nothing in the real world. Oh, yeah, but in the laboratory with the noise at this level, and when I test with a 3 milliwatt signal, I get a better performance. I don't care. That's not a real world thing. It's a laboratory testing. Real world testing is what I do. Same antenna, 2 radios, in a harsh environment like I live with 50 kilowatt AM stations and tons of very powerful FM radio stations. This is the best real world performance you can get here. I bought a multi-coupler that has the capability of bringing the same exact performance of the antenna and the same antenna to every single radio without having these radios have interference or any link with each other. What I say is, it's as good. I find that the performance of shortwave signals is pretty much as good as the AirSpy HF Plus Discovery. Absolutely. Better? Nope. And I don't see it. And I haven't seen anybody show me a real test that is without a doubt, okay, it's clearly better. So it's just what I'm going to say here, okay? Because I'm tired because people are just bashing all the time every time I talk about it. And this is my personal observations. Just like the Icon ICR30 might be a great radio where in the middle of the woods where there's nothing. But I'll say it again. You should not have to play with an RF gain on a radio because you live in a different environment than some other. Jim Gordon. Okay, this is good. Dimitri, yeah. What else do we have? Our JDA Dakota says, not trying to advertise. Yeah, well, that's my observation. It's not an advertising that I'm trying to do here. But because we deal with technologies that we have to use, so in this case, LED bulbs, I mean, hey, my power bill went down moving from incandescent bulbs to LED bulbs. It showed I pay less every month. But we all understand one thing is that the incandescent bulbs create zero noise. If you don't have any choice, incandescent bulbs, that you can trust them for no noise. There's no electronics in there. It's just a filament, and that's it. But LED bulbs can create noise. I've tried many, and the ones I have that are Philips I don't hear any difference turning it on or off. RTM says MLA30 antenna cheap, great performance. Absolutely, it is amazing, totally amazing, for sure. Jeff King from Jacksonville, Florida. Nice to have you here. It's possible. Electric cars. Who knows? What else do we have? Let me just go down, try to reach. Bye, TVDXer. Toujours un plaisir. Fais attention à toi. À samedi. Skip just worked K6M on 7034CW. You're a big fan of Morse code. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, the problem with the GP5 SSB is that when it's off, when you turn it off, the batteries drain, unfortunately. So that's the bad part of the GP5 SSB, which is also the Texan PL365. Sal Morial, nice to have you here. James Johnson, I'm in an apartment. Use a couple of bull poles with antennas mounted to them in the proper grounding, and they are perfect for a cheap, easy takedown and put up antenna. C-Crane. Most of the C-Crane radios I've seen are all DSP receivers. Chris Alpha Tango, nice to have you on board. Bluegrass Dan, my RSPDX and my Air Discovery have the same results with SDR console. I see a big difference with the Flex radio, but it has the pre-selectors and 7 order paths. Yeah, but the Flex is not also in the same price range. You know, I can understand that a receiver that has a much different price tag to it can show you a difference. But I mean, RSPDX and AirSpy Discovery are technically in the same competing price range because the Discovery is 169, but with one antenna input. RSPDX is 199, but it has 3 antenna inputs, which is for me worth $30 more to get 3 antenna inputs, no switching and anything in outside. But I could see that the Flex could technically have a difference because it is more expensive. So it's a different kind of in a different league. Danny Shortwave Radio DX, nice to have you on board from Yonkers, New York. Raining here too, pretty much, actually. What else do we have? John Arnold Newell, listening to Argentina and to the world on 93.95 via our WRMI. Yeah, we're still on. Is it just half an hour? 93.95. Let's check it out here. 93.95.
Okay, that is just a fragment of the DX supplement that is produced by Arnaldo's client.
It's a little noisy here, but it's there.
Description of the English language version of it.
Argentina 93.95. I like those relays of WRMI, I can tell you that. Brad and Amarillo. 93.95 is WRMI. It's the radio RAE Argentina. So, hey, I've reached the bottom of the chat room after an hour and a half. James Johnson bought a 16 feet copper wire ground rod and drove it into the ground, then connected my ground wire to it there. Cool. Charles Spencer, nice to have you on board. And nice to have you here. Cool. Where are you located, Charles? Out of curiosity. Nice to have everybody's location. Always nice to have all of you here. Don't forget that Sunday is the new schedule season. Will be lost for a few days in our schedules. It's very important to understand that we could be a little lost. And what else do we have? Let me just check out something here. I'm curious. So almost at 1,600 members. Pretty amazing when you think about it. Cool. Cool. Anything here? Okay, that's pretty cool. So this weekend, we will have schedule changes. So your favorite station that you listen to all the time might have a new frequency or a new time. So of course, it's going to take a few days for all the schedules to be in order. Then Shortwave Radio DX, RSPDX is hands down the best bang for the buck. I thought about buying something like an ELAD. However, I think it won't be a huge improvement to spend over $600 for an SDR. If it's a question of money, because probably here on the channel, one of the things would be to test that out. It's hard to say, I see a lot of people with this fancy radios DXing and showing us how they get this or that station that nobody hears, and they will tag it to the fact that they had an ELAD, or tag it to the fact that they had this fancy $1,000 receiver. And when I see that, I'd like to use an RSPDX. I'd like to use something much more down to earth and less expensive, with the exact same setup at the exact same time and the exact same frequency, and see if were you able to get the same signal. Is it really that gave you an good enough edge to tune and listen to a signal? I understand that different price tags might give you different performance. And my personal take, and that's my personal opinion once again, receivers of a certain price point, say a Texan PL 990X, I think is at the peak of sensitivity that you'll get with a $1,000 radio. Meaning it's going to get the same signal. It's going to be there on a Texan PL 990X. It might even be there on a Texan PL 680, which is $100. But I agree that when you go into the kilo dollars, the $1,000, $2,000, what these radios add is maybe a slightly lower noise floor, which is not impossible because of better electronics, and some features, some settings, some some bells and whistles that might just enable you to get an edge out of that same signal and tell me, okay, I was able to understand what they were saying and ID the station thanks to the extra features of my radio that is more expensive than a $100 radio. But I don't have. If I'd be a millionaire, I could have all of these radios all plugged into the same antenna in the same way and test them all next to each other doing the same job. But as you guys have seen here, and I'm going to do a few more, a lot of you have been impressed when you saw how the same antenna and same setup, a $100 portable was a pretty good competition to my big gun ICOM ICR 8500. which is a $1,700 radio. And when you see that, that's where you start thinking, okay, how much more performance am I getting for the price paid out of a big gun radio versus a cheaper one? And here we're not talking about $20 radios. We're talking about getting into $100, $150, $200 portable. And we're talking about an SDR. There's nothing that I get on my ICOM ICRD 500 that is not being picked up properly on my RSPDX. Yet, the RSPDX is what? Almost 1/10 of the price of the ICOM. And you're like, yeah, there's nothing that's going to impress me on the ICOM that, there's nothing I'm going to tune on the ICOM I'm not getting into the RSPDX. That's where you're starting to, think about things. Now, let's be fair once again, because we got to be fair. An SDR, like an RSPDX, an AirSpy, we think about these as $200 or $150 receivers. They're $1,000 radios. Because let's be fair, there's a computer behind it. When I use it with my gaming machine, I have a $2,000 SDR plug that's playing here. Because my gaming machine costs a lot of money. Now, it could be cheaper because you can use a cheaper portable, but still, we've got, and I think that's very important to do so. It's important to add the PC price to the SDR price, because I'm sorry, but that is the combination of radio. So if you're using a $1,000 laptop on a $200 device, you got a $1,200 radio. A lot of processing power and a lot of the stuff that happens in a computer, much more than on the SDR itself. So these are things we have to think about. It's very important. But apart from that, it's crazy. But the more I look at all the performance of all of these things around us, and I'm like, wow, I'd like to see, what you are saying as this is the best radio in the world. I'd like to see and test other radios with it, and maybe show you that, that expensive thing you purchased, it's not necessarily that much better than the much less expensive version of this. Of course, there's more money, so there definitely is more electronics. There definitely is more possibilities of tweaking signals and stuff. But man, it's interesting. Thinking about it, it's kind of interesting. It's really interesting. Pretty crazy. I would buy the Texan PL990X from Anonco, which is the only place you're sure you have the real good, perfect version, and the shipping is super fast. You'll get it in 3 or 4 days. Bob Lewin, nice to have you here. Yes, I have a Texan AN48X here, and do not buy that. If you're to purchase a Texan AN48X, get an MLA30 and use it indoors. It's a much better antenna, for sure. Chris66, what gauge wire do you throw up in a Trina Park 14 gauge? Whatever I have. The size of the wire doesn't matter. It's really the length. So as long as it's, sturdy enough that it doesn't break easily, it doesn't really matter. I just go out and pick up whatever I have at a cheap price for wire. I'm lucky because here where the electronic surplus store that I have got tons and tons of wire at pretty decent prices. So it's just whatever I have around. Glenn Helwing, WK3P in Michigan, 40-meter dipole. wants to make contact. James Johnson, with the boom in things being retro and vintage craze, I think it'd be nice to see one of the radio companies build a vintage style shortwave radio, but have all the modern goodies inside, knobs and all. Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting. Carl Icon, no, I didn't get it yet, but it's on its way, so I should have it. I should have it any day. I haven't checked the track. Do I have a new tracking number? The guy sent me a new tracking number. I'm just going to check it out here quickly. eBay, my eBay. So first I'm going to check the Chinese Malachite, Malahite, whatever. Okay, we got a problem there too. This is crazy. I got a problem here. This is going nuts right now. So I'm going to have to do, even that is not making it here. Probably the same problem as the other one. Okay, I'm going to have to check that out. Let me just check my messages. So maybe shipping information updated. Okay. So I don't know. I have to 12. Okay. Let's check it out here. Response. Yeah. CK's details. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to check something here. Link. And look at the tracking. Tracking. Checking out a tracking number. So apparently it is track. It says in transit, so I don't know. I have no idea. I'm gonna have to check that out. And for the Malahite, the Chinese thing, something's wrong now. So I'm gonna have to write that guy too. I guess it had a battery inside, and that also didn't make it here. So I'm gonna have to ask him either a refund or something. Man, this is so complicated. I'm starting to get tired of ordering from these places that don't know that the battery is a problem. Oh God. So we'll see. Whenever I get it, I'll let you know. Charles Spencer, there have been nights where I get better reception with a little cheap radio alligator clip too. I get from my discount. Yeah, a discount isn't shortwave though. Remember that a discount isn't meant to be shortwave. Most discounts are built to be above 30 megahertz. So they're not the best antenna. They will be better than a telescopic probably, but they're not going to be the best antennas for shortwave though. Steve Miller, agree. I actually have better results with the simpler SDR V3 than my ICOM R71A with Collins filters. Yeah, you know, it's a complicated and complex world right now. And one of the things also, by the way, Charles Spencer, is you got to be careful that each day, each night is not the same thing. Propagation differs and changes all the time. Take care, Thomas Olson. Yarabumba. As countries are starting to roll out 5G technology, is this going to affect shortwave reception? I don't think so. The only thing about 5G technology that could change is the fact that it could create noise. But honestly, 5G is a big joke, and we're not even getting 5G speeds or anything. It's a term that is a big joke in technology right now. Todd J. Riddle, nice to have you here from South Dakota. What else do we have? So we have RJ88 Dakota running speaker wire along the near fence for several meters. Clip to the D808 works perfectly. Cool. Nice to have you here, Todd. Bob Lewin says, agreed. I have both the AN48X and MLA30. MLA30 is 10 times better and quieter, indoors, outdoors, and I live in New Jersey. The problem with the AN48X is twofold. In some range of the spectrum, it does help, but not everywhere. And in some places, it's actually worse and induces more noise. The other thing is the AN48X, you got to tune it. And it's extremely finicky to tune. I mean, you're on a frequency and you have to be super patient to be able to tune that thing to a point where sometimes you're not even sure if it helps or not. And that's where you get yeah, okay. The MLA30 is, there's no tuning. It just works everywhere. It just does a job. And it's, for the difference in price, which is very small, the MLA30 is not much more expensive than an AN48X. And you just set it up and that's it. No finicky tuning, no nothing, Matt says, we've had snow 3 days out of 4 this week already, but it melts off quickly. Cool. Cool one. Nice to have you here, Steve. WRMB801, new to GMRS. So is the B-Tech V1 a good starter portable? I'm not the one to ask for that. You'd have to ask somebody else here. I don't know if anybody can answer that question. James Johnson says, being in Florida now, he just can't handle the cold anymore. Candy Glass. I know you get this question a lot, but I live in an apartment complex that doesn't allow outdoor antennas. Are there any antennas you would recommend for that situation? Look, your best bet. Okay, 2 things to try. Start by hooking a wire antenna around a window frame or something in your home. See how it performs. Try different areas, different window frames. Kitchen, bedroom, living room, whatever. See if you have some reception. It depends on the noise level you'll have around you. That's the cheapest test that you can do. It might be surprising in some situations sometimes. If that doesn't work, then the best bet, the best thing that you can try that will be a possibility is a MLA30 loop antenna. They sell it even on Amazon. It's a magnetic loop. Magnetic loops remove, by the way they're designed, they are kind of immune to certain types of noise that is created by our electronic devices. That'll be your best chance. If that doesn't work, you'll have to listen to shortwave somewhere else, unfortunately. That is the sad thing about all of this. Danny, shortwave radio DX, I agree with buying from some countries. I've been waiting almost 3 weeks for a GoTech drive for my Amiga 500 I ordered. I figured it'd been waiting almost 3 weeks. I figured it was Spain. It would have been in over a week, not 3. My Commodore drive came from Serbia. I'm not kidding. I ordered that thing in December, and I got it 3 weeks ago. It almost is. It's almost as if you're like thinking, yeah, well, I'm never gonna get that thing, and then one day it shows up. I've noticed that things coming from Europe tend to take forever since COVID, where coming from Asia isn't too bad now. They're kind of, there was a small period of time where things coming from China were complex and very complicated, but lately it's been surprisingly fast from China. Pretty much back to the normal situation. But Europe, everything that comes from Europe seems to take forever, and I don't know. It almost feels like you don't want to buy from Europe anymore. It's really crazy. So So Kenny Glass is from New England. Nice to have you on board. Yeah, a dipole on the ceiling, anything, piece of wire. Try it. Start by that. Honestly, start with that. And you'll see. Mike Thornton, nice to have you here. WC0L/7 in Arizona. So has anybody put an MLA30 on an internal rotor for, the MLA30 and every loop anyways, most of the time what they will tell you to do on a magnetic loop, okay, if it's for shortwave, directional pattern is not very important. There ain't much difference between having the antenna in one direction rather than another, especially for long distance shortwave reception. And it will tell you most of the time, put that loop with the lowest noise that you have and leave it like that. It's a better trade-off than having it on a rotor or anything. On medium wave, okay, it's different because these stations have much more directional patterns because they're closer to you. But usually your pattern of noise will be mostly on a specific angle. Whatever frequency range you're going to be tuning, the noise is always coming from the same place. So if it's for noise, I don't think a rotor is something that you'll need, because the noise at 3 megahertz, 10 megahertz, 20 megahertz will probably all come from the same direction, which means you'll always have the loop at the same position to minimize noise for the most part. Kenny Glass has had good luck with experimenting with various wire antennas, but ever since a new neighbor moved in, there has been a lot of electronic interference, and honestly, I just want a proper antenna. MLA30. It's a cheap alternative. It's $40, $50-ish. And that will, if you want to have shortwave come back, that'll be the best performance versus price that might actually give you back some of that shortwave that you lost because of the noise. Jose, what is the noise floor approximately you get with SDR playing MLA30? I get -100. That is a irrelevant question most of the time, because here I'm 100 right now. My RF gain is about 80%. I'm at -110-ish, 105-ish. But this is very, 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 this is very, very different from location to location. KI5 MIT radio station. Nice to have you here. Saw your live stream a while back, and it inspired me to get my ticket. Cool. My kid memories of listening were brought back. Thanks. Cool. Happy to help you out. M. Johnson, another option is the U-loop with a preamp, really quiet, beats my MLA30. Yeah, but most of the tests that I've seen is the U-loop is deaf compared to an MLA30 because it doesn't have an amplifier. U-loop is a passive antenna. It's not that it's bad, but a lot of the tests that I've seen is, for the most part, it actually is it's not, doesn't get the signals the same level. I suspect that maybe your MLA30, you're powering it with something that creates noise in it. Because most of the tests I've seen, MLA30 beats the U-loop because of its amplifier. It's like having a U-loop with an amplifier in it. Todd, can the MLA30 be okay to mount it outside? Yes, it's an outside antenna. It's made to be outside, actually. And mine has been out for the second winter in a row now. Works great. Take care, VT Radio. Stay safe. Cool one. Have you seen Radio Oddity Orange G5 portable ham radio with Bluetooth programming? No, I've not. Tony Turtle, plug the radio in one socket outlet and the antenna in the ground hole. Can you read the TV guy? Speaking of MLA30 loops, sometimes I find I get less noise on the long wire on the MLA30 once in a while. It could be picking up noise. I don't know how you're positioned, but it's possible where your MLA30 is, that area is noisier for some reason at some point. That is possible. There's also the fact that it could be the power how you power it. The power adapter you use to give it its power could be a problem. It's complex to understand all of it, because when you look at just having an antenna 2 feet away from another one can create a huge difference in the noise level you got and so on. It's crazy. It's one of those things that you experiment with and you're like, well, why does it do that? And why does it act like that? I've had 2 MLA30s about 6 feet apart, and one was so noisier than the other. And I mean, same balcony, but just 6 feet. 6 feet. And I could see that one was noisy compared to the other. And if I'd switched them, because I did, the one that was noisier became quiet, and the one that was quiet was noisier suddenly. It's, and 6 feet. I mean, you're like, it's 6 feet. Can there be so much of a difference in 6 feet? And that's where you see that it doesn't take much to have a huge difference in performance and noise level and so on. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. Hen says that U-loop will be producing an active antenna soon. Well, that'd be interesting to see. If it's well designed, decently priced, could be an interesting antenna to test out. For sure. Brad in Amarillo says, known as N5 LUL, is Yaesu FT920, makes a great shortwave receiver. Cool. Bob Lewin says he powers his MLA30 with a spare iPhone charger. That's what I did here too. VE3 VTG, nice to have you here. Yeah, antenna coupling, that could be. But at 6 feet, it's starting to, I don't know. There's so much that, can happen. It's just crazy. M. Johnson, when powering the MLA30, I was using a USB battery pack. Any suggestions for cutting down the noise? First, you have to try to find if it's that's making the noise. So power it with different things and look at the noise level. Is it different or not? If it is, then it means that depending on the power source you're using, some is creating more noise than other. But because battery packs, some of them can sometimes be noisy, as much as a power adapter. It depends on the battery pack. Try it with different adapters and see if you see a difference. Game Reader TV guy says, have the MLA30 Plus facing southeast 15 feet. It's plugged into an Apple adapter that's 60 hertz. I've often wondered if that was what it was. It's not impossible. The adapter itself can sometimes be a problem. Some people that have with MLA30 and come back to me and says, well, it's so noisy I can't use it. I've often wondered, maybe the power you used was the problem. Tom the Xer, U-loop is designed to be used in high dynamic range SDRs like the Discovery. For all other types, you need low noise amplifier. But it's still a passive loop, and a passive loop cannot get the amount of signal that an amplified loop will have. And most of the tests that I've seen really done well seem to show an MLA30 beats it because of the amplifier it has. It's a loop, and it's a passive loop, so it performs like a passive loop. It's not that it's bad. It's not what I'm saying. But it's interesting. I regret one thing. When I got the AirSpy HF Plus, I went to the purchase page, and at the bottom, they said, well, no, people that buy the AirSpy HF Plus Discovery will also buy a U-loop. And I think it was like, man, it was cheap. It was, I think the U-loop was offered at like $27 or something. And after I purchased it and they had shipped it and everything, I thought I should have purchased a U-loop also to be able to compare a U-loop with the MLA30 with the devices I have. I regret not having to do so. Maybe I should get a U-loop and test it out here also to check out, honestly. It's crazy. So, but it'd be interesting to test out. I should have purchased a U-loop to test it out. Roughest power is MLA30s with battery packs only. Yeah, here I tested it with battery packs. I've tested it with at least 6 or 7 different power adapters. And I have not seen any difference with either of them. But it doesn't mean a power adapter cannot induce noise in it. So we got to, it has nothing to do with the money, Yogi. It was just on the moment I was like, I don't need a U. It was more of a, I don't need a U-loop. I got an MLA. I use the MLA30. I don't need that. But then again, with so many people having a U-loop, it was like, you could have tested the U-loop. So, most of the purchases that I do is not a question of money. It's just a question of, at the time and the way it is. So, all I can say about that, Bob Lewin, is because you say synchronous power adapter that they advertise as noise free. There are better adapters out there, that's for sure, but I would, and I always say, never power your portable receivers with a adapter. So, Matt, I powered my MLA 30 with the RSPDX for a while. I don't see much of a difference with the bias T that's included. Right now, I'm back on the bias T of the MLA 30 because since I use the multi-coupler, I have no choice but to use the bias T of the MLA 30 again. I didn't see much. I actually didn't see any difference powering it from one or the other. I'm just waiting for the Gel loop antenna. Maybe I should do that. Here's the Gel loop. Here's the official shortwave loop antenna. It's going to suck the airwaves. I'm going to sell it, and it's going to suck the airwaves. Oh, God. M-Stacks, loop antenna question. Isn't the null of a signal made by aiming the broadside of loop in the desired direction will a loose wire loop like the MLE 30 Plus, does this work well? It's very, very finicky. The null in a loop like the MLE 30 is very thin, and it's not necessarily super easy to use. It's somewhere in the broadside of the loop, but it's a very just Google a magnetic loop antenna null and look at the pattern that is going to show you in a graphical way to understand it. It's extremely thin null that it will have actually. Todd, is that a Uniden 980 SSB? Absolutely, right here. Absolutely. I actually tested it with my Tram 1411 discount a couple of days ago. I think that thing is going to make me a amazingly good CB antenna. Yogi fed his MLA 30 with a breadboard bias T feeding 12 volt with a battery. The noise level didn't drop significantly. What is very, 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 very funny because there are tons of modifications people have done over time with the MLA 30. I mean, at the price it is, it's great because it's perfect for modifications. It's perfect for anybody that just wants to play around. You get a couple of MLE 30s and play around with design and loop size and so on, which is great, which is what the radio is all about. We got tons of people that have modified using, power feeding the 12 volt directly to the antenna without using the original bias T to it because, people's like, oh yeah, but the 5 volts gets up converted to 12. It creates noise in the circuit and so on. Then you'll have 100 people doing that, and you've got 100 different results. And you start looking at the results and everything. And that's what I try to do carefully. Look at the results. Is a bigger loop doing something? Of course, it changes its properties. It's actually designed to resonate with a certain size loop and so on. Most of what I see when I look at all the modifications people did is the stock loop the way it is, modify it the way you want. There's no real improvement in anything or pretty much anything people did. bigger loop, thicker loop, copper loop, 12 volts direct instead of a bias T, which is 5 volt up converted to 12. What I see in the end is that I suspect a lot of because people are not lying. People probably have a real personal opinion of what they've seen actually happen. But suppose that the power supply you used was a little noisy. You're powering it with a battery on 12 volts directly. Your first opinion will be, 12 volts, so that there's no conversion, is lowered my noise level. Yeah, maybe it's your power supply. I don't know. I don't know what you think. Because then there's the other way where I see some people that did it and say, I didn't see any difference. Okay. If it would be such a difference, everybody would see a difference. But a lot of people don't see a difference. So I go back to maybe it's the power supply you use that gives you a difference. It's a complex thing. It's not a laboratory when people test out. Changing the loop size, the wire for copper, whatever. What I understand when I look at all the tests is no difference. Changing the coax for something more that is more quality. Nobody convinced me that it's different or better. I've seen some people put some really good coax on that and say, I don't see a difference. No more noise, no more less. There's no less noise, no more noise, no. At the end, what I understand is the MLA30, the way you get it is fine the way it is. There's no real improvement in pretty much anything you do on it. Play around and, of course, test it, but nobody has convinced me of any change that made it better. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with much more, a noisy adapter or some other phenomena around the antenna because of the changes you did than anything else. So Todd, do I like it? Yes. The 980 SSB is an amazing little rig. Honestly, for a CB radio, it's really good. I'm really, 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 really amazed at that little thing. Can tell you that. Yeah, Matt, exactly. It's the main antenna going to my multi-coupler, so I have to use it. So, Mike Thornton, I have the TRAM, TRAM 1411 discount. It is a discount that has the big, so it's a discount that has the big vertical on top of it for lower frequencies. And it has two add-ons to put on the edges of the discount to tune, to make sure that you actually can tune the CB frequency range so that you have the lowest standing wave possible. And it is first, I just installed it for a couple of hours because it was not installed well. I could not leave it outside. I left it outside just for a couple of hours to test. I heard satellites real well. I picked up pretty much everything I wanted to pick, and it was like really installed very crappy. So I'm telling myself, man, if it's installed crappy like that and I get all of those signals really that well, that's a great antenna. And there's an SDR in Montreal that I can test when I actually use my CB here. I can listen to myself with an SDR that's about maybe 6 or 7 kilometers away from here. And I could hear myself really well using it. And once again, it was installed very crappy. So I can't wait to, I ordered actually a aluminum piping to set it up. which I should have in a few days, early next week at the latest. And I can't wait to set that thing up because it looks so promising. I'm really happy with it. MSTAX. I thought the nulls worked because the signal reaching both sides of the loop at the same instant causes a signal to cancel out. It's a very complex way of look at. Like I said, Google the magnetic loop antenna null, and you'll see how complex it is as a situation of how it works. It's not as simple as we think, and it's a very thin null on a loop. Bob says Nikon D130 discounts hard to beat for VHF UHF. The Tram 1411 that I have is also rated very, very well for what it is. M. Johnson, all the mods I made to MLA30 did not improve in any way. Most made it perform worse when back to stock. Yogi says the placebo effect plays a role in the mods. Oh yeah, that definitely is the case. So it's and when people tell me, well, I'm going to put a larger loop, I often say, well, you're changing the properties. It resonates at a certain frequency. That loop size is not, they didn't decide, well, this is what we have, so let's use this size loop. They actually thought of that size loop because it resonates with the circuit at the frequencies needed. When you put a larger loop, a bigger loop, you change its properties. An antenna changes its properties very fast depending on what you did with it. Put a larger loop and you're resonating somewhere else. It might be better in the long wave, who knows? But it's, Canadian Radio TV guy, I do have a power line at the end of my street, so I think it might be that causing the noise. Yeah, that is. I've got a transformer right on the other side of the street right here. But yet, funniest thing, there's a power transformer there, but I have less noise in the front with my MLA30 that I do in the back, which has only the phone lines, and I have the impression the phone lines make, more noise. I don't know. Matt says, the only mod I've even considered was changing out the feed line, but I don't think the included one is as bad as people made it out to be. I don't think it is as bad either. I've seen a lot of posts bashing the MLA30 with people saying, well, it's flimsy. Yeah, okay, let's just look at it as it is. Right now on the front balcony, I have a W6 LVP loop, that big tubing coax thing around it and everything with its mast and all. It looks sturdy. It looks solid. It looks, people are going to look at that, look at the MLA30 and say, oh, look at that little flimsy thing there compared to that really big, solid loop. Because that's the first thing you're gonna see and think. Now I have both, and I can tell you one thing is that little flimsy thing is as good as solid. And you know what? It's even worse because the more I think about it, the more I would never have purchased the W6 LVP. But then again, I'm happy because I can have real world test. And when somebody tells me I got a W6 LVP, it works great and it's so much better than that crap MLA30, I can come back and say, it ain't better. I'm sorry. I got both. I can tell you, real world, it ain't better. It's way more expensive. So when people tell me, my Walbrook is so much better, my that, it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. If you're happy with your Walbrook, that's all that counts. If you're happy with your W6 LVP, It's all that counts. But I got an expensive one compared to a Chinese cheap one. W6LVP is not impressive, and I know from tests that I've seen online that it is roughly equal to a Walbrook from all the tests that I've seen. And all I'll say is if you're happy with it, whatever you purchased, fine. But you know what? If I move out from here, if I go somewhere and need an antenna, I will not buy a Walbrook. I will not buy a W6LVP. I will buy an MLA30 because it does a hell of a good job. And you know what? When people tell me, well, it's going to break down in 2 years, that's $40. I could buy one I could buy one a year for 10 years, and it's still going to cost me less than what I purchased that W6LVP loop. So, and when I see people like, oh, that cheap coax that's on it and so on, at least it has a coax. You want me to rant about it? A W6LVP loop costs crazy amount of money. Okay? By the way, you got to buy your own coax, and you have to actually isolate the coax connector on the BNC because just to make sure water doesn't go into the amplifier box, and it's like, what the hell are you talking? The MLA30, you know what they did? They just dumped tons and tons of epoxy on the circuit to make sure that if ever water goes in, it doesn't go on the circuit. It includes a very nice length of coax with a SMA connector at the end for $40. And you want me to try to promote a expensive antenna that I'm not sure I want to promote? No. And I'm tired because a lot of people bash on the MLA30. I've seen a lot of groups that are Walbrooks or W6LVP or anything expensive, and every time somebody comes with the MLA30, it's always like, oh, that Chinese crap, don't buy it. And you're like, yeah, you never tried it. You don't even know what you're talking about. And that is one thing that I'm so tired also. You never tried it. You don't even know what you're talking about. And you're just saying, oh, that cheap Chinese thing, don't buy it. At least try it. At least I've tried an expensive loop with a cheap Chinese loop. And I know more what I'm talking about than what you are talking about because you got a Walbrook and you think that, oh, because it's a Walbrook that costs that amount of money, it must be the best antenna in the world. No, doesn't mean it. Doesn't mean anything. And the MLA30 definitely has its place for a decent antenna. I can tell you that. What else do we have? Larry Cordy from New York. Nice to have you here. Hector Vasquez. Nice to have you here from Los Angeles. Pretty cool. I mean, it works well. Like Keegan has a W6LVP. It works well. It's not it doesn't work. It's works well. It's just it's as good. So it's like the it's just like the the AirSpy HF Plus. It works well. I didn't bash it or anything. I'm not bashing a Walbrook or I'm not bashing a W6LVP. They are good at what they do. But the MLA30 definitely can show these big gun expensive antennas. You don't have to be expensive to be a darn good antenna. Breakfast says, my MLA30 is flapping in the wind, no difference in reception. Yep. Yeah, and I really think that RJ88 Dakota, that the phone lines in the backyard here make more noise than the power line outside with the transformer. So, so like I said, Keegan, it's like, W6LVP loop is great. It's as good. It's just that when you start testing out with the MLA30, you're like, why am I spending so much money now on a loop, If I had bought the MLA30 before, I would never purchase a W6LVP. And when I got the W6 LVP, I had an improvement. But when I tested the MLA30 and saw the MLA30's performance, I was like, whoa, it's as good. And it's, a fraction of the price. Wow. Crazy. Like Yogi says, the MLA30 also for the expeditions, the MLA30 is such an easy travel antenna. Absolutely. W6 LVP, forget it. These are made to be out and installed and not really budge from there. Aerial imaging. Could you cut a length of stranded wire the same length as the provided MLA30 loop and use that? Because then maybe it would make a nice packable portable antenna. You could use anything on that loop as long as it's the same size. If you have the same size loop, you would be able to, and you're capable of shaping it round, roughly. It's going to work. It doesn't matter what you use. But you know what? The MLA30 loop, the way that the loop is done is that you can actually fold it kind of a smaller loop, which makes it really, it's capable of being in a bag or anything. So Hector Vasquez, different antennas, different tastes. Yep. Yeah, I understand that, Keegan. But also, if you do add the coax with the W6 LVP, you'll have to add the price also. It's crazy. Any shortwave, I have the MFJ 1886 loop. Can say the MLA30 is a great deal. Canadian radio TV guy. Oops. Lost it. I always unplug the power supply and disconnect the antenna from the radio in the summer after I'm finished in case it gets it with lightning and the thunderstorms. Yeah, that's always a good Yeah, Rufus, we always need an MLA30. It sucks the waves out. Nobody else can listen to the same stations. Just buy an MLA30. Government approved. Oh, God. Aired on WWCR. That'd be great. John Brocato, and I say, have you heard from Pittsburgh? Canadian Radio TV guy, speaking of phone lines, I used to be able to hear my mom on 2.4 gigahertz handset at the top of shortwave band with my Realistic DX 56. Wow. Some kind of image. Yogi, one thing I want to try with the loop is to replace it with a cat head shaped loop and see what a cat comes. That'd be nice. We'll call it the Paul the cat loop. Oh, God. JD Dakota. First cordless phones we bought was GE, and I could hear it. Yeah, you know that some of you might not know, but the first cordless phones that came on the market in the early 80s were on 1.7 to 1.8 megahertz. They were these cordless phones were used between the AM broadcast band and the 160 amateur radio band. And the first one we had at home was there. It was like on 1.7, something like 1.750 or something. And I could hear it on my DX100. And they were AM mode. And then they moved to the 49 megahertz one. Yogi's best way to make the loop looking good. Chaz Tank says, experimenting is part of the fun of the radio hobby, building antennas, such and such. Yeah, absolutely. If you buy an MLA30 M Johnson now, you get only the plus. I think nobody has the original one. After extensive testing of the MLA30 original and the Plus, I can tell you there's really not much of a difference between one or the other. So Keegan's got BNC cable RG58, 50L. Yeah, works great. I mean, the W6 LVP works great. It's not that it doesn't work. It's not what I'm saying. It really works great. So, you know. Oh, really? So that must be something new because mine did. I don't think they had that when I ordered mine. Mine has a came with the power supply, standard power supply to operate it with 12 volts directly. One thing that I shouldn't have purchased, and I wish I could, I would have left it alone, was the filters to remove medium wave and FM. Because what happened is when I purchased my W6 LVP, the guy that makes them came back to me and said, "Look, I looked at a map, and you are in the middle of really powerful AM and FM stations, and I think you should add these filters because the antenna is going to overload." I would have been curious to see how a W6 LVP loop performs without them. And one of the reason is I will give points to W6 LVP here. When I test the W6 LVP and the MLA30 together, it's kind of a varying curve. It's like performance is like this throughout the spectrum on both. Parts of the spectrum are better than with the MLA30. Part are a little better than W6 LVP. But there's one place where definitely I start seeing an improvement. When I go below 3 megahertz, the W6 LVP loop seems to perform better as I go down. So on 2 megahertz on 160 meter band, I seem to have better signals on the W6 LVP. Problem is, I got the filter on. So when I go below 1.8 megahertz, it cuts off and I have no more reception or very weak reception because there's a filter there that cuts off the medium wave band and the long wave band also. I would have been curious to see how that thing performs on long wave if it was not that the filters were on, unfortunately. Canadian Radio TV guy, go on Amazon. All you see is the original. I barely see the Plus. That's where I bought the MLA30 for 45. Yeah, it's all the 30. They don't mention the Plus very often, but you still get the Plus. The original one probably sold out now. Yeah. Oh, it's a portable version of the W6 LVP with battery pack. Okay, interesting. There's a lot of the original. There's a lot of original frequencies here. I noticed, for example, that Bell keeps a lot of original frequencies for the first generation cell phones that were in the VHF 150 megahertz range for their own communication systems if needed. John Mercato says using 2 MLA30s each with SMA Theon 4 radios, 2 on each MLA30, with no noticeable signal loss and no inter-radio interference. That depends on the radios you use together and the cabling. Because when I did split my signal directly, I did notice no difference between some radios, and some receivers did actually have a difference. For example, my PL990X would become deaf if I plugged on the same antenna my PL680 And I noticed that after a couple of tests, not immediately when I did test it. It's when I unplugged the 680 and I noticed the signal level go up on the PL990X. I thought, oh, look at that. There's a difference when I unplug this one. So it doesn't do that with every radios. It depends on the radios. But and so that's why I got the multi-coupler. Like that, there's no more interactions. So if it works well for you, cool, you know. But just keep in mind that there could be a radio someday you're going to plug in, and it's going to have an effect on the one of the other radios. Bluegrass Dan, when the phones were on 49 megs, I could listen to the neighborhood in my 6-meter rig in outdoor Yagi. I was amazed listening to the way women would talk to each other. You know, listening to phones and cell phones on the analog times, it was just like, man, just crazy. Yeah, not that I know of, Candy Gloss. The from what I understand, they are the way they are on is not easy to remove. Yeah, like I said, Jared, W6 LVP loop does a great job. It's just that when you get an MLA30, you're like, okay. Just crazy, you know. What else do we have? Wonder if she'll use an antenna analyzer for the tests. No, not really. I don't have one here, so that's for sure. William Oslin, nice to have you on board. KC9TVN, Aussie. You know, I don't use the W6 LVP loop pretty much. And I was actually thinking of setting up my discount at its place where it is right now. If I do that and make it pretty much useless, maybe I should take the time to open it up and check out if I could, in a easy way, remove the filters. If that is possible, then I could maybe set it up, and because I'd be curious to see its performance. If there's one thing I'm curious to see on it, is its performance on medium wave and long wave compared to the MLA30. Because I know the MLA30 drops off quite fast as you go down in frequency. I do see that its long wave performance isn't very good, and its medium wave seems okay, but you know. Right now, the K180. Yeah, K180 you're talking about. I don't really use it much right now. It's in the back. It's all set up in a backyard. It's just that it doesn't have any coax connected to it right now. I haven't used it in a little while because what is happening is now I've got too many antennas. So I got to limit. I got to limit a little bit the antennas that I can use at the same time. Now that I also add a discount to the antennas, I have to see what I'm going to do. One of the reasons why the K180 is not used much is since it's, I can't use it on shortwave here because it's overloaded crazy. The only other place would be the VHF. I did quite a lot of VHF UHF. And kind of interesting to test, but now I have a discount and stuff. It's like I got to choose. If I could, I would have all the antennas set up all the time in every possible way, but it's kind of complicated because my own antenna farm in an apartment complex is not necessarily the easiest thing to deal with. I can tell you that. So, you've got an MLA30 in the front, a W6 LVP in the front. You have to deal that you have to set up a discount, then get a K180 also at the same time. That would be in the back. And there was the sloper, and there's my mobile vertical. It's like, Yeah, okay. I gotta calm down and decide exactly what am I going to use and how. Um, so we're gonna see. We're gonna see. Take care, M. Johnson. Nice to have you on board. But I'm lucky because I mean, there's not that many people that live in an apartment complex that would be able to have all the antennas that I do have with nobody complaining about anything. So at least I've got that positive point to it. That's for sure. But it's it's one of those things. Canadian radio TV guy. If you were to compare, what would you say is the best loop? MLA30, W6LVP, or K180? You know, MLA30 is great. W6LVP for me is equal. What I would say is maybe where the W6LVP could beat would be in the lower frequencies, I would guess. The K180, what I can't test really, it's just real world performance more than in reality, because what's happening with the K180 is that it's a wider loop. So the K180 adds what the MLA30 has, but it adds the capability of going up to the VHF range. What is the biggest problem with that is that it overloads crazy on shortwave with the FM breakthrough. What I understand is that people that live in more quiet environments, like rural areas with nothing strong around them, the K180 is actually pretty good. It seems to be a pretty good shortwave performer. It's just that here it's unusable. So if you're looking for a broadband, wideband antenna and you don't live near these transmitters of AM or FM stations too much, then the K180 could be a very interesting choice because you have a wideband reception there. So for that reason, it beats W6LVP or MLA30 for its range. And in the specs, even at UHF 400 megahertz, for example, it seems to still be surprisingly good. So somebody looking for a wideband antenna, well, the K180 could be a surprising antenna to use for shortwave and for VHF, even to the UHF range. For the rest, W6LVP, MLA30, because of my personal tests and impressions, the MLA30 is for me the best because it's the best for price performance. But then again, if you're a medium wave, long wave DXer, maybe W6LVP is a good choice. It's there's so many things in there that are it's not a question I can answer like this is better and that is better. That's for sure. How many is too many in the antennas? When you don't have any space anymore? Oh God. I got an antenna farm on my balcony. Yep. Look, that's pretty much what's happening, Jerry DX. Oh God. Tell the manager of the apartment that COVID is bringing you down in antennas. I actually, he doesn't care at all. He doesn't care at all. So, yeah, that K180, for example, Canadian Radio TV guy would overload with your situation. Shortwave becomes totally crappy because of that. So, oh man. Jerry says I tried both loops deep in the bush, the Canadian Shield and W6LVP loop was working better in getting signals, but the MLA30 was okay on that day. Yeah, well, here what I see is no difference, roughly no difference on either one. So I don't know. Yeah, well, I'll check it out, Yogi. That's for sure. Hey, I'm Phillips. Nice to have you here. So hey guys, a little tired. I'm gonna head on to take it easy for the rest of the night. It is 10:45 p.m. here, so it's quite late evening. I hope you enjoyed the show today, and we're gonna be back Saturday with another show, and hope that you enjoy that. So stay safe, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight, and we'll be back talking about radio for sure. After 2 hours and 45 minutes, it's always fun to be here and talk radio. And there's no sorry, I'm Phillips. There's no clear yes or no sometimes on some of the questions of antennas and radios. It's not that clear sometimes that you have an answer. So take care, everybody. Stay safe, and hope you enjoyed the live show today. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.